If you don't already know, there's been another breach of public security in Singapore, and yes, another round of finger-pointing by the government. I am of course talking about the recent break-in into the Changi MRT depot and the current round of Tai Chi performed by Mr. Wong Kan Seng, who as Minister for Home Affairs is entrusted with a grave responsibility of ensuring the public security and safety. In a shocking turnaround, the MHA now says that the security of Singapore rests not with the government alone, but with the private sector as well. This is what the ministry said. Private sector premise owners must take proactive ownership of security in their respective domains, remaining vigilant and cultivating a security mindset. Safety and security are prerequisites of success, not products of it. What the government is saying is that SMRT is a private company and should therefore assume its share of responsibility for safeguarding the public security. Let's be absolutely clear about this. In the first place, SMRT is not a private company. Temasek Holdings owns the majority shares of the company, and Temasek, in turn, is fully owned by the Finance Ministry. The chairman of SMRT is Mr. Koh Yong Guan, who also chairs the CPF board and was the permanent secretary at the various ministries. To give the impression that SMRT is part of the private sector and therefore not under the purview of the government now that a blunder has been made is completely unacceptable. In the second place, even if the private sector is also responsible for public security, it was the failure of the ministry to deploy security personnel around the fencing of the depot. The bombings in Madrid, Spain, where nearly 200 people died and thousands more wounded, rams home the magnitude of the scale of Mr. Wong's failure. Imagine if it was a terrorist who broke in to plant a bomb instead of an artist just spray painting some graffiti. The consequences would have been incalculable. The lapse in security is mind-boggling as it is inexcusable. Now bear in mind that Mr. Wong is also the minister responsible for another security bungle where Masalamat had slipped through all security measures and escaped on foot. The security failure was of the highest order. Calls for the minister to resign at that time over the gaffe was ignored by the government. Apparently, Mr. Wong has not learned his lesson. One would have thought that the minister would have conducted a thorough review of all security systems in Singapore following the Masalamat debacle, including beefing up security at MRT depots. This was not to be. Just barely a couple of years later, we find the fencing of the MRT depot at Changi was left completely unguarded. In addition, we have also had persons entering and leaving Singapore without proper documents in the recent past. Now, such breaches of public security has occurred repeatedly under Mr. Wong's watch. Our fear is that it won't be his last. The minister must be called out and he must be held accountable before a real tragedy occurs. The Singapore Democrats call on the government to take full responsibility on the latest fiasco. The Minister for Home Affairs must apologize for the failure fully and unreservedly for the breach. In addition, the government must lay out plans on how security will be beefed up at all sensitive installations in this country. No more excuses, no more pushing the blame. Compare this to US President Barack Obama. Even though the explosion of the oil rig and the subsequent oil gush that is currently taking place off the coast of southern US is caused by BP, a genuine private company, Mr. Obama has come forward and accepted responsibility for the disaster. He told the American people, "I take responsibility."
I take responsibility. It is my job to make sure that everything is done to shut this down.
No doubt Americans will hold their president accountable over how he handles the oil spill crisis and its aftermath. Singaporeans must likewise hold our government and in particular the Home Affairs Minister to higher standards. Remember, it is the people who are the regular users of the MRT, not the ministers.